if I'm sitting here asking you how it's going, getting ready to make tea. Let some folks roll in. Let's see how bad the trolls are today. We'll do all messages, and if the trolls go crazy, I'll put it on subscriber only mode. So that's one way to do it. Yeah, last time it was crazy. I don't know why. Sometimes they just come in waves, you know. They just come in waves. Wait for some folks to roll in. I'm gonna do the Moonlight White. I've just been really stuck on this one lately. I have so many other teas that I could to go with, but for some reason, the Moonlight White has just been like, my brain says adjust it, has been what I'm being pulled to right now. Get my hands to work. We're gonna see how well my brain works. I've been under a deep level of stress the past 2 weeks, and it's starting to come to an end. Well, kind of. So I'm just kind of like coming down from that a little bit, and it, you know, it just fries your whole limbic system. And if you don't know what your limbic system is like a part of your brain like that's directly connected to like your nervous system, and it's like cognitive function, emotions, memory, you know. Just the things that keep us going, but stress can really hijack it and make it like hard to function and word recall and things like that. So we're gonna do it live and see what happens. So hey everybody rolling in. Let's make some tea and then jump on into a Q&A. Yeah, so I haven't really been doing anything except for like horrendous online like data work, you know, and trying to really figure everything out and just kind of like get myself settled in and free myself. But today I'm excited because I get a break to build the goat fence. No, we're gonna walk around, and we have probably about 4 or 5 acres that we're fencing off, and the first part of that is just putting up all the clips. And since we're running 4 lines, we've got to put a lot of clips up before we do like the constant walking of 4 to 5 acres to run the wire. So it is definitely, you know, but I don't mind outside work. I actually kind of miss it. My husband does a lot of like the farm ranch type stuff just because I am constantly working, you know, like online and stuff. And it keeps us, you know, going because it's what we do for a living. So I have no choice. But I do like when I'm able to get out there, and then once that's in place and the goats are contained in their new area, then I can scramble like Mad Max to get the little bit of garden that I'm doing in. Because right now, when they want to, they can kind of get in 100% to um, where the garden is, and while there's a lot of like weeds to distract them, they will eat down anything I plant because goats are just notorious at that, you know. And so, you know, it's one step at a time. And I can see out my window that the linden tree is close to blooming, which is exciting. But it's also why I look kind of green, because the sun hits the linden tree and then bounces the green in at me. In the morning, it's worse. If I try to do a video in the morning, I'm like, oh, I look like I'm gonna puke because it's so green, you know. Um, but yeah. So this is kind of a question, and usually I don't answer questions until after my tea. But this is a good one. Someone says, can you talk about how you deal with overwhelm? I know you often speak about that area, but hopefully you can again. Yeah, I'll bring that up just because it's so like in my reality right now in general, and I want you to know that sometimes how I deal with overwhelm is to just have a fucking breakdown. Like to just be a real human, and I don't always cope with it really well when it's high stress levels. My brain does this thing, and I say my brain because the way I exist in my like weird brain is like there's me and then there's my brain. And sometimes my brain doesn't necessarily accept the fact that I have a human body that has limitations and it should solve things right now. You know, and so usually my cycle, if I'm not good at it, is I push too hard, I push for a long time, and then I have like an insane breakdown, but like usually like internally or my body just stops functioning in some way, and then I pull my shit together. But actually I just posted about that on Instagram, about how like when you're in high stress levels, your limbic system gets like hijacked, and so the only thing that you can pay attention to is the thing that's causing you stress. And so really the only way out of it is to start making little changes to start taking care of yourself again. Like this morning I'm making a pot of bone broth, and it seems maybe unrelated or stupid or something like that, whatever label you want to apply to it. But the very fact that I was like, no, you're not going to get on your phone and see what you need to respond to about this stressful thing. You're going to make this pot of bone broth, and then you're going to have some breakfast, and then you're going to go sit outside. Because the thing that stress steals from us is our ability to take care of ourselves. Now, when you are really stressed out, like chronic stress, you become maladapted to it. So like you tend to just exist through it and vaguely take care of yourself, but you take care of yourself a little bit better than when it's sudden, hard onset stress. When the stressful thing just happens, you basically stop doing all these little small things that help you exist, like making sure that you're eating nourishing foods, or doing laundry, or picking up after yourself, or taking a shower, or doing anything besides being on your phone and doom scrolling. Doom scrolling happens a lot when we're really stressed out because our body's trying to find the thing, right? And so really it's about like reclaiming one little thing at a time, being like, no, I'm not going to think about that right now, brain, even though it's a reality, because I need to do the dishes. Right. And it seems really fucking mean to be like, we have to push ourselves back into these patterns of like taking care of ourselves and our home and the people around us. But when you do that, it shows your brain that you no longer have to like deeply focus on this thing, even if it's still a factor in your life, right? Of course, we could work with herbs like, like skullcap, or you could work with like chamomile, things like that to just calm yourself down. Milky oats would be a good one. This morning, I made a pheromone perfume and I made a video of it, so don't worry, I'll upload it. So I can use oxytocin to blunt my cortisol response, and I did. But you don't really want to do that while you're like peak stress. It has to be where you're like calming down, because like oxytocin tones your parasympathetic nervous system and just makes you feel like things are okay, you know. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. The perfume it's funny on the video because I was like, let's see, and I was like, holy shit, I felt it hit me, because I literally felt I literally felt the oxytocin hit my neurotransmitters. And like, that feeling where you're so happy you could cry? That is literally the feeling that came over me in the video. I was like, okay, so it's working. And then, I was just kind of like high for a little bit because my brain's like, oh, and it like completely shunted me out of that mode. So I'm still dealing with the current thing that's freaking me the fuck out, and I'll still be dealing with it for a while and the ramifications of it. But now I'm kind of working on letting it like settle down, and it's kind of like noise in the background of a thing I still have to deal with. But hey, April, you still have to deal with all of these things, right? So hope that little bit was helpful for people, dealing with that. So it looks like my tea is up, and you guys got like a bonus question there. Oh, she smells so nice. And I think this will be a nice little compliment to my fucking pheromone high from earlier. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Um, did you know that when women have an orgasm, you release oxytocin? And so you also release it when you give birth to make you bond to your baby. That doesn't always happen for women. So the women who are like, oh, what is this? I can't, that didn't happen. But and I experienced it both times. With my son, well, no, I should say I experienced both things. With my son, my birth was so violent that I didn't have like the oxytocin release because of the abusive piece of shit doctor, right? And so it was hard. But when they put my daughter on my chest, the level of like the rush I felt from the oxytocin, it is like nothing I've ever felt like since before, you know, of being like, whoa, you know, and you bond in that moment. Well, when you have an orgasm, the same thing happens. It's meant to help us bond to our partners, which is why it can be really insidious when we jump from person to person to person, right? Because your nervous system doesn't really believe that the bonding is happening because it's not, right? But you can also utilize that to your advantage to take you out of like stress and stuff like that, you know. And so I don't know. This morning I was like, all right, well, I had one assisted oxytocin rush on myself. And then my husband assisted, and then I made the perfume, and then by the time that my husband and my daughter got back from town, I was like, how's it going? Like, I was super just chill, and here I am now doing a Q&A. So if you oh, and thank you for all of the happy Mother's Day. If you have a question, say question, and we'll jump on in, and we'll see what my oxytocin brain comes up with. I'm not as floaty as I was earlier, but I'm like, everything's kind of just chill, you know. I'm like low key, like pheromonally stoned or something like that. Um, and so that's pretty handy. I have a feeling. Let me go. Okay. Uh, Question: have you used the plant bone set? If so, your thoughts? Yeah, she's all right. I don't. I think she's one of those things where if you use her internally too often, the alkaloids can make your liver a little grumpy. So I would like use as needed versus like using it consistently, if that makes sense. Um, Question: I made a curing cabinet like yours, but it's taking forever to cure. 1 week and my 3 calendula blooms are still moist. Any thoughts? What's going on with your dehumidifier? Check to see if there's like are you getting liquid in your dehumidifier? Are you not emptying the dehumidifier? Is it off because it's too full? There's something happening with your dehumidifier, because remember you have to have a dehumidifier in there to pull the moisture out of the plants. And it might be that the dehumidifier is too small, but usually even a tiny one works for those. Okay. Uh, Question: is horse chestnut safe to use in a salve for edema? Yeah, it's fantastic to use for things like edema, as well as like varicose veins and spider veins externally. Don't use it internally, but externally it's pretty fantastic. You can even make a witch hazel infused horse chestnut spray. That's like doubling down, especially if you're wanting to deal with varicose veins, because you're really after those tannins and the ability to tighten and tone. Let me jump down here. Question: any recommendations for someone abandoning a vegan diet because of mental health? Yeah, go slow. I'm not saying like go slow into eating in general, but I mean like don't go from I haven't eaten meat in however long to I'm gonna pound this huge porterhouse steak, because it's gonna take your stomach time to adjust back to being able to digest meat. So start with easy things like butter and fats and slow, long cooked meat that falls apart, right? And your body will respond. Now, one thing I see happen, because if a person falls into veganism, they tend to be prone to going extreme in any direction. I've seen a lot of people go from vegan to carnivore, and just so you know, carnivore can be just as damaging as veganism, right? Because you also still need certain vitamins and minerals that come from like vegetables and grains, right? Like if you're gonna go that way, look into animal based, so you're at least eating like fruits and squash and stuff alongside of the meat. Um, let's see. I don't know. Is sage good for cat rituals? How long should I burn? I don't know what you mean by a cat ritual. The funny thing about sage, and you're talking about white sage, did you know that traditionally white sage was used to remove female energy from like the hunting parties, like gear and equipment, because they thought that if they had female energy on their stuff when they went out to hunt, it would like fuck up their hunt. And so that always makes me laugh, because everyone's like burning white sage, like it's always women. And you're sitting there technically, like if you go off of like traditional stuff, you're like removing female energy, you know. But like whatever you believe, and if you believe you can use it in a cat ritual, I'll go for it. Question: my friend has problems with low dopamine levels, consistently fatigue, low motivation. Thoughts? Thanks. Yeah. So if she has low dopamine, she likely has high cortisol, right? She also likely has low GABA, but in some instances, you could have really high GABA repressing your dopamine. They work interchangeably. There are two plants that she could consider start working with. One would be California poppy, which increases your GABA levels, and then one would be ginkgo biloba, which increases your dopamine levels. And you kind of want to use them synergistically. Shameful plug, I have a synergism capsule that combines California poppy and ginkgo, but regardless of where you get it from, I like working with them together because if you just take California poppy, you can really up-regulate your GABA and down-regulate your dopamine. If you just do ginkgo, you could really up-regulate your dopamine and down-regulate your GABA. Get it? But if you use them together, right, you're pushing back against each. And so that could genuinely help deal with like her dopamine dysregulation and things like that. Okay, question: is there a place where fresh herbs can be purchased to make tinctures from? Also, to work with something like blue vervain, should tea be made? If and where would you buy it from? Yeah, there's some clever workarounds for buying fresh herbs online to make a tincture, and I've done it. Right. But you are kind of limited because most of like the standard herbal things you'd make a tincture with, you usually can't find somebody who's willing to sell you just a small amount of it. But there's a handful of herbs that we call culinary herbs, and they're like thyme, rosemary, mint, lavender, oregano. All of these are ginger, onion, garlic. All of these are really fantastic for supporting your immune system and like your health in various different ways, memory functions. You can even go with mushrooms and things like that too. You can get those fresh. Because they sell them as culinary, you can buy them online. You want to search around for like organic or like what's most affordable to you, right? And then when it comes to blue vervain, that would be a hard one to get online fresh, but you can use a dried blue vervain in a tea, and you'll want to shop around for her too. You're more likely to find the blue vervain at like specialty type herbal shops. You probably won't find it somewhere like, well, you might find it at Mountain Rose if they're growing it, but you're just going to have to shop around and find little small shops because usually those places, just so you know, even Mountain Rose herbs, they are usually importing a large amount of their herbs from like the Bulgaria region. Nothing wrong with that. Actually, Bulgaria and that whole area of like the eastern like Balkans and things, it's really amazing. They produce a huge amount of the world's herbals that people use because they naturally grow over there and they have the perfect climate for it. Like I would like move to that area just because of that. Like it's crazy, like the level of things that are just like wildly there, right? But other than that, you'll just kind of have to lean into the culinary. Now, you could get creative and ask on your local Facebook groups, be like, hey, anybody got a big lemon balm patch or, you know, catnip or whatever you're trying to look for? See if anybody has some in their garden that they're willing to sell you or share with you, you know. Um, okay, so question: help with menopausal acne, large cluster breakouts on sides of face. I have been taking your wild yam and chamomile capsules for 3 to 4 months, taking with vitamin E. If it's still happening or if it started happening, there are two different things. If it's still happening, you might try shifting over to the pine pollen chamomile ones. If it's still, or if it started happening, you might try shifting over to the pine pollen chamomile ones. If it's still happening and you're still on them, you might need to support your detox pathways a little bit better, right? And then topically, you could use our yarrow tincture and or my yarrow spritz recipe, which is just witch hazel with yarrow in it, basically, to help knock down the acne as it comes out, right? Sometimes people, it could be hormonal, but there still has to be a bacterial component there, right? So if we attack the bacteria that's causing the breakout, it can at least reduce the breakout time frame or, scale it back a little bit. But you might need to still work on like opening up like your detox pathways through your gut. So start eating like well-soaked beans, well-soaked oats, like mushrooms because they have beta glucans in them, things like that to just kind of bind onto your bile and get the excess hormones out of your body. Okay, so let's see. Question: how do I lower bad cholesterol naturally? I'm trying to avoid taking a statin. Well, let's reframe the narrative of bad cholesterol. It's challenged a lot. We need cholesterol, and the levels of which they say are high now. It's crazy how they keep lowering the threshold. It's almost like if they lower the threshold to where you basically are supposed to have no cholesterol in your body, it's really easy to get you on a medication that is banned in most other countries, such as statins. But if you really want to lower your cholesterol naturally, you need to allow your body to utilize your cholesterol. And do you know what your body utilizes cholesterol for? A lot of things. It uses it for hormones, cognitive functions, thyroid health, but also your body uses cholesterol to make bile, which is what you digest your food with. So, the best way to lower cholesterol is one of two things. You can work on lowering your inflammation. You could start working with something like shiitake mushroom and hawthorn to help your body lower inflammation and by proxy your cholesterol, because usually bad cholesterol being high could be something of your body attempting to resolve inflammation. But you could also do this really neat trick where you start eating well soaked oatmeal 1 or 2 times a day. You start eating well soaked beans 1 or 2 times a day. You start using binders like chitosan. Basically, what happens is when you bind to the bile in your gut, which you need to be doing on a regular basis, you shit that bile out. You get rid of a bunch of excess toxins, excess hormones, and things like that because you're getting rid of that toxic bile basically that's constantly recirculating. But then this neat thing happens. Your liver said, we need to make more bile. So what does it do? It pulls cholesterol out of your blood to turn it into bile to put back into your gut. And then if you catch that bile, which is cholesterol, at the same time and you shit it out, it says, we need to keep pulling this cholesterol from our blood. And that's why, and this is important to listen to, before statins hit the market, the cholesterol medications that they used to use were bile binders. They bound to your bile so you would shit it out and your body would then pull cholesterol from your blood. But statins came along and they were like, we're bigger, we want money, and they did away with all that. So it's really actually pretty easy to do it. You just have to eat a lot of oatmeal, beans, mushrooms, anything that has beta glucans in it naturally binds to bile and then you shit it out. Right? And it's a thing that everybody needs to be doing, honestly, regardless if you're dealing with hormone issues, mold issues, heavy metals, toxins, high cholesterol, inflammation. Bind to your bile, shit it out, allow your body to start functioning again. Okay, so question. What do you mean by well-soaked oatmeal? Should you soak it before you cook it? Absolutely. So oatmeal has like anti-nutrients in it, and you really want to get those gone. And basically, it's take your oatmeal, whether it's quick oats, normal oats, steel cut, ground, Scottish, whatever oats you're going to use. What you're going to do is you're going to put them in a bowl, and you're going to put like a tiny spoonful of plain yogurt in there, and then you are going to cover them with water and let them soak until the next morning. Dump them out, rinse them really well, and then cook them. They're well soaked and they're completely digestible, and you've removed all of the anti-nutrients so your body can use them. Same thing should be done with beans, except for I like to use kombu seaweed unless like I don't have it on hand, because you can use yogurt in the same way, but sometimes the acidity from yogurt will make it hard for the beans to cook all the way and they'll stay tough, right? Kind of like you don't want to cook beans with tomatoes right away because they'll never soften up. But you can put a piece of kombu seaweed in there, and then you can soak the beans overnight and then rinse them really good, and suddenly they won't give you gas and they're digestible and they bind to the toxic bile. You can definitely check out like the Weston Price Foundation talks about like soaking grains and nuts and seeds and things like that, and beans, and how to do it. You know, it's been, our ancestors always did it, regardless of where you're from. They've been doing it for a very long time, and they knew the importance of preparing these things before we ingested them. Okay, so question. Friend is having prostate issues. PSA is 4.63. Any suggestions? Yeah, you could start working with fireweed is a really good one. I have a video on not grass, not weed, not grass, and that's a really good one to bring prostate, numbers down and shrink that prostate. You could have him start working on like understanding like estrogen dominance and how it correlates to like prostate issues as well. And then you could also have him start doing like rebounding, which is like jumping on a trampoline and like lymphatic flow. It doesn't seem related, but it really is related. If your like lymph is stagnant and not moving, the prostate suffers, right? So all those things combined are really beneficial. Um, what is my style called? Human, right? Like I don't. I always think that's funny. Well, I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me what my style is called, but I think it's just human. Question: any recommendations for gradually switching from Prozac to something natural? Gradually is the word there. So even though Prozac isn't a benzo, it's an SSRI, so it's hitting a different area in your brain. You are gonna have to go very, very slowly to come off of an SSRI, SSRD, anything that is impacting your serotonin levels, because your brain is gonna go fucking crazy. Right, your brain is gonna, you're gonna have horrible symptoms. And there are Facebook groups and things like that online that help people wean off, and they usually help you figure out a tapering schedule. And I highly recommend getting involved in that and having a plan before you jump off. And the truth is, and I say this as a person, I was on benzos for a decade. It took me like 2.5, 3 years to come off safely. And during that time, the hardest thing was facing the fact that I couldn't really use any herbs to help myself through it, because they often stimulate the same areas that we're wanting to heal. But in your case, you're not really dealing with GABA so much as serotonin, so you might be able to work with nervines a little better. But I would stay away from any herbs that stimulate serotonin, which, by the way, is actually a stress hormone. It's not your happy hormone. And they even admit that now, and they say, oh, well, these medications, they put so much serotonin in your body that it shuts down those receptors so you don't have to feel anything. And that's not fucking great. It's not ideal, but definitely check out the Facebook groups and get yourself a tapered plan to follow, and so you know what's happening, and from there you can kind of probably get insight into what you are not allowed to do. Question: what can I add to my diet as an anti-inflammatory for back injury? Ginger would be a really good option. I think ginger is highly overlooked for things beyond nausea. She's really amazing as an anti-inflammatory. She's pretty fantastic as an antiviral. She's really good at lowering histamine, which can be linked to pain issues like that, right? Inflammation in general. If you have high histamines, you'll have high inflammation. And so she's also pretty good for like, all the hormones and digestive and getting your body going to the bathroom more often and all that type of stuff. And she's an easy one to access. Pretty much anybody right now could go down to a store and find ginger. Fresh ginger is best, but you can also get like the ginger juice, start cooking with it, start making ginger tea, all that type of stuff. Um, Question: how do I grow my hair back? I have alopecia, universal total hair loss. It just really depends. There are some people that have been able to address their severe nutrient issues, as well as usually in men it's more about like severe estrogen dominance and non-testosterone, but in women it tends to be more about like severe thyroid, cortisol, adrenal, or nutrition. It can all be stacked together. It can be genetic, unfortunately. But if you haven't ruled out the nutrition, and I'd say, okay, so I can't tell you to do an HTMA hair test if you've lost all of your hair, but hear me out. There are some companies that if you look, they test fingernails. They can test your fingernails or your toenails for your overall mineral and vitamin and heavy metal content in your body, right? And then so that's something that you could look into to see like a deeper level of what's happening. But you can also look into your thyroid if they haven't, your cortisol if they haven't, your adrenal function if they haven't, and then start looking at your diet. Like, what's your diet like? Are you eating enough like animal fats, animal proteins? Are you eating any animal organs? Are you eating enough fats, or are you eating enough carbohydrates? Like, the body usually loses hair for females when we're under like a crazy amount of stress. And remember, stress doesn't have to be external. It's also stressful on your body if you undereat. It's also stressful on your body if you're not getting the right types of nutrients. It's also stressful on your body if your thyroid's repressed from whatever reason. So there's all kinds of stress outside of external that we need to look at. Question: total thyroidectomy. What to help with temp fluctuations in energy, what to avoid. Currently on synthetic meds, would like to switch to natural freeze-dried pig thyroid. Thoughts? Yeah, you'll have to take something for the rest of your life, obviously, and you know that. But like, honestly, just dialing in what you need will likely be the answer there. And with synthetic thyroid, you're not likely getting the full spectrum of like T3, T4, right? And so you could slowly switch over, of course, talking with your endocrinologist about like using like the natural desiccated thyroid. Some people switch over to Armour, I always say it wrong, but I have read that people say the formula isn't like what it used to be, and the problem is you have to find an NDT, a natural desiccated thyroid that's been standardized. You can get NDT online, but the problem is if it hasn't been standardized, you don't really always know the dose you're getting. You might get higher or lower any given batch you get. Whereas if it's standardized through a pharmacy, you know that every amount you're taking is the same and it's easier to watch that way. I would dig into everything and anything from the direct work of Dr. Raymond Peat, but also looking into his side networks of people who talk about all this stuff would be really helpful because his obsession was thyroid. Everything and anything thyroid you ever would want to know about would be available through anything and everything to do with Dr. Raymond Peat. He since passed away, but all of his work is still out there. Okay, so question. I'm allergic to cosmetic products and I've been washing my face with honey and using your lotion. What else can I use? I have pie acne scars. Well, for the acne scars, you could make a calendula infused castor oil. Calendula is really fantastic for reducing scar tissue. It won't fill in the divots from the acne, right? But it can soften the edges and get rid of the redness or blueness or whatever your discoloration looks like, which by proxy gives a softer feel, right, and gives less appearance of scarring. It takes time though, and castor oil is really fantastic at breaking down scar tissue in general. So combined, they're amazing. Now, castor oil is a little thick, so you don't want to put it on during the day. I would put it on at night, and you have to use it consistently. It's not going to do anything in a handful of days. I'm talking weeks, months, a long time, and eventually it'll start reducing it. I also just came across like emu oil is pretty fantastic for scar tissue as well. It has lots of fantastic acids in it that help break down basically the scar tissue breakup. So you might be able to make the infused castor oil and then cut it with emu oil to help thin it out so it's not so claustrophobic on your face. Thank you so much for the super, Michael Anthony. I have enlarged prostate. Will saw palmetto help? It could. It is something that has been pushed hard for that, and there have been men that find success with it. Find a high quality brand. There's lots of junk out there because it's popular. It's really easy for you to buy some cheap shit made in China that hasn't been botanically verified or anything like that. You could also alternatively or alongside of it find yourself some fireweed to make a tincture or a tea, or find somebody who has already made a tincture. That's pretty fantastic for lowering your levels with your prostate and shrinking your prostate. You could also work with uva ursi or bearberry, it's what they call it, but you need to work with that like on and off again. It's not something that I would take consistently, but it can help reduce the enlarged prostate. And then definitely look into estrogen dominance. Most men who are facing prostate issues are also facing estrogen dominance because there's soy byproducts in everything we eat, and it impacts your body. Men are supposed to have estrogen for sure, but not as much as women. Like women are supposed to have testosterone, but not as much as men. We're like opposites, right? But we still need both. But estrogen dominance will directly repress like a lot of functions in your body and lead to prostate enlargement. Question: I have low B12 and I have been on the shot for 8 months now. I'm still tired without much motivation. Any other ideas on getting some energy back. Well, the thing with B12 is, are you taking the cofactors? Are you also making sure that you're getting enough like iron and potassium? You might look into like panathine, which is like a panacea B vitamin, but your body really needs it to produce the B12. But also, have you considered like looking into like the type of B12 you're using? Have you tried a different variety of shot? Have you done any look at your genetics to see if there's something else hiding in there? Maybe you have a bottleneck. Maybe your body's not able to use the B12 due to a mutation. What are your methathione levels like? What are your homocysteine levels like? Like, these are things that you might want to look at to see if your body's not able to utilize the B12, or if there's something else going on that's making it bottleneck. And again, if B12 eats up potassium like crazy, so a lot of people end up on the B12 shots, but they don't have enough potassium, and then you'll feel tired all the time because you aren't actually able to use the B12, and the more B12 you take, the more potassium you become deficient in. And so it's definitely something to look into if you haven't already done that. Okay, so question. What can I do with fresh jasmine? Ooh, you could make a tincture. You could take that jasmine and get some sort of high quality green tea and make your own jasmine tea. Basically, you would take the dried tea and you would sprinkle the jasmine flowers in there and allow the dryness of the tea to basically dry the jasmine, and the flavor will be taken into the tea. And so she's really fantastic for that way. As a tincture, you could also make an elixir, which is just a tincture with honey added. I really love jasmine tea, but it fucks me up so much because it just triggers my histamine so badly, and I just can't. And I love it so much. I love it so much. But you could also make a perfume. You know, that'd be a nice way to do it. You could dry them and make an infused oil. That would be nice topically. Okay, question. Just found out from the doctor through a CAT scan that I have a small mass on my right adrenal gland. Doctor said it's not a big deal, but I've been having issues for like 2 years. So if you have the capacity, find a different doctor. Because if they tell you that you have a mass on your adrenal gland and then it's not a big deal, what the fuck? It is a big deal. It means your adrenal gland could either be over functioning or under functioning, right? It could be doing either or, and either case is dangerous. Like, did he also look at your pituitary levels? Have you gotten your pituitary levels checked to see if it's getting enough of a signal from your adrenals? What about your thyroid? I would consider, if you can, finding a functional medicine doctor and letting them know what's happening, because at the very least, they love testing. They will throw more tests at you than likely the endocrinologist did. And if you just saw a normal doctor and he's not an endocrinologist, at the very least, go to an endocrinologist. It's what they do for a living. And so it is definitely a big deal. But I can't really say what herb or thing you could do until you know if it's over functioning or under functioning. Because those are two very different things, right? And if it's over functioning, you wouldn't want to take an herb that stimulates it. Get it? Like, you wouldn't want to do either way. So I would be persistent. I would not take his word as final. I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna push if you can push. Even if you can't switch doctors, push. He is not taking this seriously enough, and he needs to. It doesn't mean that you're gonna instantly die from it, but don't let him just scoff it off of, oh, you're just fine, and then in 5 years you have a fucking adrenal crisis, and they're like, huh, didn't see that coming, right? So just don't take his lack of interest just because he should fucking retire because he's tired of his job as the final say. Okay. Hello from New Zealand. I have been in menopause for 8 months now and have gone from my weight normal for me to gaining heaps of weight around my stomach and legs and a lot of water retention. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty normal, but we don't like it, right? Especially because we're told that we should remain the same size all the time. But what's probably happening is, have you had your cortisol levels checked? Sometimes when we go into menopause, our cortisol can like kick into overdrive, right? And then when that happens, we slam on weight on our thighs and on our stomach. It's super, super, super common. And eventually you can start having like hip pain or glute pain and things like that, because then your cortisol is so high all the time that it's literally eating your muscles. This is what happens when we don't eat enough food too. Basically, your cortisol robs glucose from your muscles, and as that happens, it basically cannibalizes your own muscles, right? Because at all times your brain requires glucose to survive, like literally every minute of the day. And if you don't get it from food, you get it from your muscles. But even if you're eating enough and you have chronically high cortisol, you still go through muscle wasting. And so getting a spit-based cortisol test would be helpful. I don't know if you have like the home-based kits available in New Zealand, or if your doctor, if you found a functional medicine type doctor, would be willing to do that. It will be far more accurate than just a morning blood draw, because cortisol goes in a rhythm. And if you just take your morning blood draw, they could be like, you're fine, but it could actually be really high in the afternoon or really high in the evening, and you won't know it because you just took a morning blood draw. So getting your cortisol levels checked would be number one, and then working on supporting your body through that, to feel like it's okay to let go of the weight, right? So cortisol just causes that and everything else. Question, what's your take on Dr. Ray Peat recommending avoiding diets rich in fiber to prevent bacterial overgrowth and excess endotoxins in the gut? I don't believe it. I think that he was a really, really bright man, but if you pay attention to a lot of his work, he kind of floats like ideas, which is great. That's what we should all be thinking. But then what happens is somebody will glom onto that idea, and towards the end, if you paid attention, a lot of the up and coming health gurus kind of grabbed onto him and then would like take him into an interview and just kind of poke him to say things, and then he would say things, and maybe it was just a part of a conversation or a thought, but then it would go on. But I think if you have, I think there is some truth there. If you have a fucked up gut health and you don't have good gut bacteria, if you're eating fiber, that it could certainly cause like bloating and things like that. But at the same time, he also told people to eat a shit ton of carrots because he liked that fiber because it bound to bile. But that same fiber is also present in like oatmeal as well as like beans. So he's kind of all over the place with some stuff. And the older he got, the more it happened. But we're not really allowed to talk about that, are we? Well, we are. I'm talking about it. But I mean, if you did that in the Ray Peat realm, you're not really allowed to question anything he says. But I think there was a lot of stuff that was really valid. But a lot of stuff like doesn't, like, it's not a one size fit all, right? Like I swear to God, if you go into anywhere in the Ray Peat community, they will be like, the only issue you have is thyroid. You need more thyroid, and you know, maybe you're not eating enough carbohydrates, which is accurate. But then they'll be like, it's thiamine deficiency. Those are the three things. And if you come at them and you're like, I eat enough carbohydrates, my thyroid is fine, my B1 is fine, you're like, you're lying. It's crazy. It's really dogmatic, you know, but take it with a grain of salt. See what works for your body the best. If you notice issues with eating fiber, you might have to work on your gut health before you intake that fiber, you know. But also, by the way, if you don't eat enough fiber and then you go to eat fiber, it will cause issues at first because your body has to adapt to it. So it's kind of like, and I always use this excuse for this example when people are like getting on to different diets after a restrictive diet. It's like, you know how your dog or your cat, if you've been feeding them one thing forever and then literally suddenly you change their food, they're going to get diarrhea and shit all over the place. Humans are no different. If you have been restricting something from your diet for a long time and then you just add it back in, it's going to cause some digestive upset, right? Just because you're an animal too. Okay, so I have been jabbering for about 40 minutes, and I would like to get outside and do some manual labor. I got to wear the pretty outfit, but now I got to change and go outside and do all that type of stuff. So if you would like to support my capacity to be a real human, to dump my brain out, to keep a roof over my head and tea in my pot, consider becoming a member. You can join for literally just 99 cents. It gets you access to early like videos as I'm able to upload them early, right? But you also get a Sunday Q&A. So this is my Friday, open for everybody, but this Sunday I have a Q&A just for members. It's a little calmer. Actually, it's not any calmer. I'm still talking just the same, but there aren't as many trolls, and I'm more likely to be able to answer your question because there aren't so many rolling by, and it's just a way to be reciprocal to members. If you can't afford to join, I don't even want you to worry about it because, you know, you've got this Friday option. I release videos to the public no matter what eventually, so it's not really a paywall. It's just a little time wall. You can also check out my apothecary. I make something for everybody. I mean, really, I've got books, supplements, all kinds of stuff in there. Directly supports my capacity to work. Even if you can do that, or even if you can't, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Sharing is important because it helps people realize that they can take their health back into their own hands, that they're smart enough to do this. It helps get my work out there and tells the algorithm that I'm a cool person. So thank you so much for watching, folks, and I'll see members this Sunday. Bye.